Welcome, all you humans out there. I'm Duuz-Diz-Din coming at you with another Star versus the Forces of Evil episode review. This time it's Season 4's episode 12. First, we'll talk about Side A called Junkin Janna. This time around, we actually see, weirdly enough, Tom and Janna hanging out together. Although hanging out might be a little too strong of a word, as Tom seems to be more concerned with, texting Star on his phone. Typical couple bullshit that you never really want to be around because it's just like, dude, if you want to just text your girlfriend that much, why don't you just go back and hang out with her? It's just like, if you're not even gonna be in the moment, turd burglar. If you haven't noticed, I've faced this issue before, and it's annoying as shit. As he just kind of doesn't really seem to wanna, actually be engaged with what's going on around him. Meanwhile, Janna's whole mission here is to go, get in this fancy boot and take Tom boot sledding with her through the trash mounds. And, while at first Tom seems to have a lot of fun, he seems more concerned with just kind of posting pics to Star to show that he's having fun. I feel that DuckTales had an episode in regards to this not too long ago. Yeah, it was the Three Caballeros episode where it was all about dude, it's all well and good to take pictures of the fun time you're having, but if it gets in the way of you living in the moment, what's the point? Meanwhile, Star on the other end of this texting spree is actually with Eclipsa trying to meet up with the Magical High Commission. However, they're kind of just put on the back burner, it seems, with them just waiting and unfortunately having no choice but to hang around with Sean, who is annoying as all shit, honestly. Sean. Meanwhile, Janna, as she's still boot sledding with Tom, notices a crow up in the sky, namely the crow Sebastian, Mina Loveberry's crow, who, Janna wants Tom to blast, as apparently he's been taking all of Janna's cool stuff, and they actually end up running away from Sebastian as they go. Tom gets a little pissy about the whole situation, especially after Janna reveals that the only reason she really brought him along was to blast at Sebastian to keep him away from her cool stuff. Which, Tom's not too happy about. But Janna ends up just chucking Tom's compact into the boot in order to just kind of, in retaliation for what he's saying. Only for Sebastian to, strangely enough, just make off with the giant metal boot, along with Janna, who doesn't want to lose any more of her stuff to Sebastian. Meanwhile, Eclipsa finally meets up with the Magical High Commission after the big delay, although things don't really go too well as Star ends up getting in a fight with Romulus, who is a little pissed off with all of her texting. And as Janna ends up flying through the air, taken away by Sebastian, Sebastian ultimately just lets go of the boot. But Janna does manage to get saved by Tom. But Janna's still too preoccupied with getting that boot because she's all about the fun. And then we find that it fell into the ruins of Butterfly Castle. And after a brief scuffle between Star and Romulus, we actually come to find out that the reason why the Magical High Commission wanted to meet up with both Eclipsa and as well as Star is because apparently large amounts of very powerful magical spells have been going on within the borders of Monster Castle. Star kind of refutes this in saying that between her, Eclipsa, and Meteora, then it'd be pretty obvious that a lot of high quality spells would be going on within within the Monster Castle, I could say. However, Hecapoo refutes this in saying that, these spells are ones that, Glossaric wouldn't, hasn't done, as I guess they've talked to Glossaric, and no living queen has ever pulled off any spell like this. So I guess they're kind of just wondering what Eclipse is up to, in not so many words. Which is unfortunate because I love Hekapoo, but she's always such a pill whenever she's with the commission or doing high commission work and stuff like that. But Eclipsa is completely done with them at this point, not having been too happy with having to wait for so long for them to come in. So she just packs up and leaves because, it doesn't seem like the Magical High Commission really has anything to truly say to her. She hopes wishes them the best in finding out what these spells are all about, but she'll have no more of their foolishness. Meanwhile, Tom and Janna have managed to find the boot that Janna was riding around in. However, we actually see something very surprising in the fact that apparently Sebastian has the very same powers as a Solarian Royal Guard, which is very interesting because it really makes you wonder, how was Mina Loveberry able to imbue Sebastian with this kind of power? Because anyone who's read through the book of spells that was put out knows that the Solarian project had its faults in a lot of ways. It wasn't a completely perfected thing. So the fact that, Mina was able to imbue a crow of all things with this kind of power raises a lot of questions as to what she's up to. And, a fight breaks out. Tom ends up sacrificing his phone in order to protect Janna. And when Tom goes on the attack, he gives Sebastian this wicked scar. Like, man, if the Sebastian didn't look cool in his Solarian form before, that scar just really just doubles how wicked he looks. Like, well played. And Janna actually showing genuine fear for one of the first times out there, just decides that it's not worth it, and she takes Tom and they skedaddle, leaving Sebastian to claim the boot. And we kind of end things with Tom, Janna, and Star all meeting up, and Tom recounting about his day, saying that, he liked to live in the moment and all that, with Janna taking none of his nonsense. Meanwhile, Sebastian meets up with Mina, who, comforts Sebastian on the loss of his eye and his scarring. But we then see that Mina is developing some form of power armor, something that looks like, I guess it's magical power armor, which apparently she might be using in order to take down Eclipsa and bring the Butterfly Royal family back into rule. So, we're getting a lot of good foreshadowing as to what Mina is leading up to. But it really makes me wonder, how much does she need to do in order for her to actually become a solid force against, Eclipsa, with all the powerful spells that Eclipsa has at her disposal. And speaking of powerful spells, we switch over to the side B plot, titled A Spell with No Name, where we see that all of Star's spells are sitting down for a pancake day, breakfast, luncheon kind of thing. We also see that the All-Seeing Eye is still hanging out with all of the Star spells and all that good stuff. And ultimately they end up running out of syrup, Richard the One-Eyed Narwhal, which still sounds like a euphemism. I'm sorry, that sounds like a sexual innuendo. Richard the One-Eyed Narwhal, come on, man. But Richard talks to Spider with a top hat, find out about some more syrup, only for them to be interrupted by all of Eclipse's spells, namely Gothmoth, Low Self-Esteem, Nightmare Dream, Ouroboros, Pyro Pony, which notably has no head for some reason, Spiral Hypno Slumber, and Void Cat. And they end up going in, just wrecking all of the lighting within the room of spells, Star spells, which, actually clues us in that there are multiple rooms for each different queen or princess's spells. And when Spider with a top hat goes to talk to them about this, um, low self-esteem nightmare dream just blasts him, and they just end up leaving and taking Glowworm with them. Um, Ultimately, Spider with a top hat ends up, being very, enveloped in his, low self-esteem, not really being able to go and confront him. So, as they, go about capturing Glowworm and using him to try to find something, they find that it's not in Star Spell's room, and then they just leave. And it's decided that one of them has to go in place of Spider with a top hat, and it's decided that it'll be Richard, the one-eyed narwhal, to go, as a lot of the other spells don't much care for Richard. We also then see the various different rooms for each of the previous queens and all that good stuff. So it's very interesting to see that in this dimension, each spell is giving their own room to just kind of rest within. Although it makes me wonder about All-Seeing Eye, as did it just move over when Star started using it? And do they choose if they stick around certain queens' rooms, the ones that they prefer? Or does it depend on how often that spell is used? And are they forced to go into that other queen's room no matter whether they want to or not at the end of the day? Really raises a lot of questions. But we continue to see Eclipse's spell going from room to room. Richard tries to talk with them about handing it back Glowworm, but they basically ignore him and continue just looking through the various other spell rooms and stuff. And when Richard ends up talking with Spiral Hypnoslumber, it ends up just telling him that he'll get back Glowworm as soon as they're done with him, should Glowworm manage to survive what they're looking for. Specifically, finding out what they're looking for is the spell with no name. And this is implied to be the very same spell that Eclipse taught Moon in order to take down Toffee. So that really devastating spell, the spell so powerful that it has no name. It's really intense, the darkest spell, as we end up seeing that it's able to just eat through the dimension like tissue paper. And when Richard talks things out with the headless pyro pony, we come to find out that their plan is to just corner it and put it in a jar as it originally was, before we find out that Void Cat had just knocked that jar off a shelf, just like a regular, a regular cat. And, all the various spells do their best in order to corner the spell. Going here and there. We even see a Goth Moth and the various plant monster and whatever doing their best in order to capture it. But as we end up seeing that this spell is so powerful, it's able to eat away at other spells, as when it ends up destroying Spiral Hypnoslumber, which immediately makes me wonder, it's just like, does that mean Eclipse can no longer use that spell anymore? Is it just out of her arsenal? Does she have to use it again for it to come back? Or just dead? Is that just a dead spell now? That's really wicked. And, all the other spells want nothing to do, as we end up seeing that the only people left are essentially Ouroboros, Low Self-Esteem Nightmare Dream, and the Headless Pyro Pony, who we find out lost his head to the spell with no name. However, as Richard ends up finding out that they want to use this thermite grenade or whatever to destroy the entire dimension to keep the spell with no name from just wreaking havoc, just from there on out, Richard tries to get them to reconsider. but Richard ends up being able to see the spell with no name due to its echolocation because it's still a narwhal. So he ends up teaming up with the Eclipse spell, corralling the spell of no name with his narwhal blast, and they end up managing to capture the spell with no name. You know, all of Star's spells end up sitting back down for their Pancake Day brunch. You know, everyone's thankful to Richard for managing to bring back Glowworm in one piece. And they actually managed to find more maple syrup as we find out that Spider with a Top Hat was hoarding all of it, which he feels very ashamed about. And nobody really comforts him in this because they're just like, yeah, you should feel ashamed. How dare you? What the hell, dude? And they even go as far as to invite all of Eclipse's spells to hang along. But they're not really into hanging out with all of the younger spells. Although I still have to wonder, it's just like, yo, All-Seeing Eye is one of you guys. I'm surprised you guys wouldn't, like, talk with your old buddy or anything like that. Like, come on, guys. Why are you being dicks? But as everyone just goes about their business, Narwhal has a very odd look about him as he continues to just look at the spell of with no name with a very ominous feeling in his gut. You know, epic foreshadowing, definitely. You know, just showing that the spell with no name is definitely gonna come into play further down the line as we end up seeing. And especially now that we know that Mina Loveberry is on the warpath to take down Eclipsa, we're definitely going to see the spell with no name implemented for better or for worse. And how's that gonna come into conflict? Because when the Magical High Commission mentioned that a lot of powerful spells are coming out of Monster Castle, Star had a very concerned look on her face when she looked at Eclipsa, kind of like she suspected Eclipsa of something. So, you know, we might just end up seeing this 3 or 4-way battle between the Magical High Commission, Eclipsa, Star, and Mina Loveberry, with Star just trying to keep all sides away from each other. Could be a very emotional finale for the most part, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. But hey, tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think Mina's ultimate plan is? How do you think the spell with no name will actually be implemented in future episodes? And how devastating do you think the losses will be when we get to that point? And if you like this video, feel free to leave me a like, and if you didn't, feel free to leave me a dislike and tell me what I did wrong in the comment section below so I might better myself for future videos. And how about subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you never miss out on another Star Versus episode review. But until then, stay on your guard. You never know when you'll be attacked by a spell with no name. Bye-bye.